The topic of discussion is what does the cashew kernel buyers want? Expectation and gap. May I invite the moderator of the session, Mr. View Thai Son, Johnson JSC. The panelists are Ms. Amanda Wright, Purchasing Director, Humdinger Limited, Mr. Amit Kirbat, Senior Vice President, Olam International, Mr. Gunjan Jain, Director, VKC Nuts Private Limited, and Mr. Sadanandan Nair, Business Head, Cashews Vink Corporation, DMCC.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This morning, the first section, we'll talk about, we have one section about discussion what does cashew buyer want, expectation and gap. Let me recall what is going on in the cashew industry for the last 20 years, as I only enter into cashew business for the last 20 years. So you see, it was in 1990 or 1991, 1992. At that time, Vietnam began the cashew industry. And also, at that time, there was a lot of workers. So if you go into one factory in Vietnam, you see maybe just one factory, maybe you see 2,000 workers, 1,500 workers. And even some big factory, you see 3,000 workers just in one factory. And workers working very happily because at that time it's not easy to find a job in Vietnam. And because of plenty of workers, so the workers doing very carefully, selection, everything is very carefully selection, peeling, everything by hand, and selling, manual selling, everything. So you can see the cashew at that time was excellent, very super white, very crunchy, the taste is very good. And the price, I recall, the price WW320 was sold at $1.6. $1.6 WW320. At one time, it sold at $160 per pound and $165. So at that time, I think buyers is happy, but because maybe demand is not so good, so the market price of 320 is 160. But later, as you know, that later Vietnam attract a lot of foreign investors. So it's not easy to find cashew workers like it used to be. So we have to use, little by little, we have to use machines. The machine have helped Vietnam to process big volume. But what's happening on the quality after we use the machine? As you know that using machine, because it is impossible to have workers like they used to be. With the using of the machine, you can see what happened. Scraping is more, moisture is getting higher, because before, if we want to put the cashew into the machine, we have to do like a humidification to make the cashew softer. So using machine, the quality is down. Scraping is more, textile is more, because we cannot have workers to do all the kernel, every small kernel. Moisture is higher, the color is getting darker. But price is getting higher, because even quality is down, but the buyer loves cashew, so they pay higher price. And last year, you can see the price of WT20 even go up to 520, 530 at peak point. So as I can say, for quality, so what buyer want? For quality, buyer seems to be accepting the fact that shortage of workers, so we have to use machine. That's why quality is not as good as before. But for the food safety, buyer is not easy like they used to be in the past. in the past, you see, if you get into a factory in Vietnam, it's not fully covered. You know, food safety standard before is not as now, and the workers, you know, don't need to wear hairnet. So for now, the food safety become more and more important. And rejection before is only on quality, not cow. But rejection now from buyers, mainly involving in food safety standard. Rejection like, you know, mainly in the West, like in Europe and USA. The rejection is now Salmonella, is bromide, and E. coli, or naphthalene. So I just want to say few things, you know, before we begin the discussion. So as you can see, for quality, it looks that buyer accepting the fact that we are having less workers. So quality not as good as before. But for food safety, seems to be no compromise from the buyer. So as you see now, FDA is sending more and more people to Vietnam. Every year they send people to Vietnam to make inspection, audit of Vietnamese factory. So this is just happened about 2 or 3 years ago. Before, normally they don't, but now they do. So I just give you some brief information just to begin with our discussion about what does cashew buyer want, expectation and gap. So today we are talking about the cashew kernel. The first people who will make presentation is Mr. Sadanandan Nair, Business Head Cashew Wing Corporation.
Good morning to the dignitaries on the stage, below, and all my friends. The topic given to me is expectation of US and EU buyers from Africa-based single origin supplier. Wing Corporation is a single origin supplier as of today. That is why the specific topic from a single origin supplier is the same expectation from all, whether it is from India, from Vietnam, or from Africa. The critical requirements. What are the critical requirements that a buyer expects from a supplier of cashew kernels? The first and the foremost, the delivery commitments have to be kept. No default should happen once the commitment has been made. The product traceability, product quality, global food safety requirements have to be followed. Good manufacturing practices, ethical trade initiatives, site security, corporate social responsibility, and business sustainability. In short, quality, food safety, productivity, and sustainability. These are the 4 pillars and basic requirement of any Western buyer. Quality and good manufacturing practices. What is to be followed? Adherence, first and the foremost, is the adherence to the AFI standards. Work hygiene practices. A good hygiene is the most important thing in a manufacturing in a food industry. No sweating at workplace, no product spillage on the ground, clean crates, and hand sanitization. Section-wise restriction on the entry and exit. This is a very important thing. The people from the cutting section should not be entering the grading section, and the grading section people should not be entering the packing section. Very strict restrictions need to be maintained there. Not hair nuts, it's, it's hair net. Hair net, mouth mask, and uniforms should be used. Damage to the floor should be avoided. Insect control and dust control, these are the most important things. Product traceability. This is one advantage that an Africa's biggest single origin supplier has. Traceability check can be divided into 2 parts, product quality and the fair trade practices. If a buyer has some problem with the product that you have delivered, that should be traceable to the shipment, which shipment it belonged to the godown of the supplier, and the production stage at which the problem came up, to the raw material, where it came from, which LBA supplied it, which village or cooperative has supplied it. This is definitely possible when you are doing a single origin-based processing. When you are in Vietnam or in India where you are doing multiple origin processing, this is a bit difficult, but in a single origin where, for example, if you are doing in IVC, you're going to use the raw materials all from IVC, this is definitely possible. Foreign matter contamination and infestation of products, most important requirement of the buyer. All foreign matters should be avoided and cleaned out at the factory level itself. I was talking to one of the buyers, and they were telling us that they lose almost 5% when they do the reprocessing once they receive our goods. Our means goods from India, Vietnam, or Africa. The common foreign materials that is found is stones, hairs, paper, metal, clothespins, buttons, plastics, wood, glass, etc., etc. Infestation, live or dead, should definitely be avoided. Microbiological issues like Salmonella, E. coli, these are the common issues that are faced, and if proper methods are followed, all this can be avoided. Other important requirements are the corporate social responsibility, ethical trade initiative, and site security controls. Corporate social responsibility is not compulsory, it's not mandatory, but there will be a weightage that will be given to the corporate social responsibility that a company follows by the local governments, by the NGOs, and by the international buyers. It is very important for the corporate to understand and align with the people and find out a common way in which the needs of the people who work for you are met and addressed in the best possible way. Ethical trade initiative. Ethical trade initiative is relating to the labor laws, international labor laws, as well as the laws of the local government. Further, to treat the workers fairly and equally is the most important thing. One is to meet the basic requirements of the workers, like a neat and clean washroom, a creche, a dining room where they can have healthy food, healthcare, restroom, etc. should be, and a good working environment is the most important thing to be provided to the workers. Slowly, there is a demand from both US as well as EU buyers that finished goods should be sourced from companies which follow the ethical trade practices. Site security controls. This is becoming very important considering the global security challenges that is being faced by everybody. Buyers are expected that nobody enters the factory unnoticed, neither does the material that is brought into the factory enter without proper checking. We should have a strong security control, covered boundaries, restricted access for both man and material. Sustainability model are common and top preference to any EU buyers in Africa. A social environment, an economic cycle, and the environment should coexist in such a way that socially it is equitable, environmentally it is bearable, and economically it's viable. This makes a unit sustainable and profitable. Thank you very much.
Thank you much for Mr. Sadanandane for sharing his experience for processing in Africa and what cashew buyer want from Africa. So the next presentation will be Mr. Kanjan Jain, Director of VKC Nuts.
A very good morning to all the nutty people out here. Why I would say nutty people? Because I mean, the way things are right now, you have to be nuts to be in this industry. I'm here today to talk about the changing regulatory landscape in India on part of the government and expectation of an Indian cashew kernel buyer. VKC is among the largest processors and packers of all nuts and dried fruits in India, and cashews are an important part. So we'll talk about the expectations of an Indian cashew nut kernel buyer. A little bit about the Indian economy. I mean, everybody knows it's the world's fastest growing large economy, and 1.2 billion population. FDI has been huge in India. This is just to give you an understanding on India, and I'll just skip through these because time is limited. There's a big growing retail sector in India. Retail has emerged as one of the most dynamic and fast-paced industries due to the entry of several new players. It's slated to be about 1,300 billion by 2020. So that's going to be a very big game changer when it comes to consumption of all nuts and dried fruits, and cashews again is an integral part. Retail industry is accounting for 10% of the country's GDP. It's ranked first in the 2017 Global Retail Development Index. And a lot of development on the e-commerce front is also taking place. So I wanted to do a small industry overview on the nuts and dried fruit industry in India. Nuts and dried fruit industry is very old, but highly fragmented industry in India. Consumption of dry fruits in India has been very low compared to the other countries. It's among all dry fruit, basically, but still cashews is the highest. But if you look at it as a figure, India is about 15% of the total global population, but it is only about 3% of the total nuts and dried fruit consumption in India. I have here some figures which you can look at later, which tells us, we did a small comparison between India and USA in terms of the annual per capita consumption and the overall consumption. So cashew still is the most widely used nut in India as a snack. It's a preferred ingredient for traditional Indian sweets, snacks, and recipes. And it is the most used nut in the horeca, what we call the hotel, restaurants, and that segment. It's used in multiple food verticals of food industry, bakery, ice cream, everywhere. So we're talking about the changing regulatory landscape in India. There are three major factors. One, we've now had a new taxation norm, which is GST, one nation, one tax. Legal metrology or weights and measures, that's another major department in India where a lot of regulatory stuff takes place on your packaged goods. And of course, the new food safety law, the FSSAI, the Food Safety Standards Association of India. So an overview on the FSSAI. It was created for laying unified science-based standards in tune with evolved economies of the world. India is now looking very seriously at food safety. It aims at being a single reference point for all matters concerning food safety matters. It's regulating manufacturing, storage, distribution, sales, imports, and all facets of the food sector. So just a comparison before FSSAI and now. Earlier we had very fragmented food laws. Every state in India, every region had different laws and different interpretations. This is how it's perceived to be, that now it will be one cohesive, centralized agency. All laws will be under one umbrella. It will be a one-window thing. There was lax enforcement of laws. People really didn't care that much about food safety, but now it is a very, very strict enforcement. No mechanism for creating awareness of consumer and stakeholders. Now at least the government is making an effort where it is involving, they are educating consumers and stakeholders through FSSAI. There are long-term benefits on FSSAI, but short-term, a lot of challenges are there. With still, the government is also learning the ropes. They're learning about how to evolve this. On the other hand, consumer awareness and expectation have increased significantly, and they're throwing fresh challenges. Food labeling in both consumer and bulk packs has become very, very important. We have to be very careful on labeling, and I'll take you there in a little while. A clear, unambiguous distinction needs to be given for value-added products with ingredient lists. You have to name everything. If you're doing a roasted and flavored cashew, you will have to name every single ingredient that will go in it. Even if it is 0.00 some percent, you'll still have to name that. Only FSSAI approved ingredients are to be used for such product. So you have to go back. If I would advise you, if you are doing that, you have to go back and check any ingredient you are using. Is FSSAI allowing that? And since regulations are still evolving, we have faced this as a company. The same additive may be allowed for one product and not for the other in the same category. You cannot make any health claims on a consumer pack unless you're backed by authenticated studies with reference. You could just write, but what is not clear is that whether this is applicable only for proprietary food where you're processing or adding, or it could be for natural products, something like a cashew nut or an almond, where health benefits are already known for ages. But since the clarity is not there, so you can't actually, right now in India, you can't put any health claim on a pack unless you have all the lab tests and results. The interpretation of rules is still not uniform across the states, causing heartburn for processors. I'll tell you a very, it's a very funny thing. We got a legal notice from FSSAI. We got a show cause notice for misbranding and mentioning a wrong product, where we were doing roasted and salted cashews. And we got a lab result which said that your roasted and salted cashews have been found with traces of NaCl. Now, NaCl is common salt. So the notice we received was that you're doing roasted and salted cashews and they contain salt. So this is what I'm talking about, that it is still evolving in India. So these are the pains that will go right now, but it will take a few years when the regulatory landscape really improves. So if you're getting in this industry, you just, have to bear these. Ascertaining shelf life of raw products is an issue. No study is right now, natural products is available. However, even on bulk packs in India, as a regulatory requirement, you will mention all the shelf life and everything. Labeling for imported food products needs serious application. Any technical error can result in rejection. Even if the product is perfectly all right, it is perfectly safe, it is in conformity with existing laws. But something like this, that instead of one single label, you put in two labels which are 1 centimeter apart, your consignment can get rejected. So you have to be very, very careful when bringing stuff in India. All food products are supposed to move through FSSAI approved transportation and stuff, which is still a long way off. Much of the transporter vehicles and warehouses are not registered with FSSAI. So even a warehouse has to be registered with FSSAI. So my advice would be on the FSSAI front, if you're going ahead in India, seek professional opinion with regards to standards, labelings, and permitted additives for value added. Insist and sensitize your carriers, contracted warehouse for their FSSAI regulations. On legal metrology, it was already in place, but now it is becoming increasingly very, very stringent. All manufacturers are required to be registered. Few are aware of these requirements. Your yearly inspection, I think these are just the normal legal things that come. But what has become very important is that there's a big clarity that needs to be done with regards to the size of fonts of everything that you write. So something like a best before on your consumer pack, or even something as small as the maximum price or the date it was packed, there's a specific size it needs to be written in. If it's even 0.1 centimeter below that, you can land in trouble with the agencies. And the same law is interpreted differently in different states. So again, seek professional opinion before creating a label and ensure conformity for same, the label size, quantity, font size, full information on label. Like for the Indian currency, if you've written the price and you have not written RS, the rupee sign, it's a violation. MRP has to mention inclusive of all taxes. Font size has to be there. Even if you're writing the weight, you can't write GMS as grams. If you're writing 15 grams, it can't be 15 GMS. it has to be G. So just advice for people who are doing consumer packs in India. The numbers and not pieces is to be mentioned for denoting quantity in pieces. We got a legal notice which said that you have written it as one piece instead of one number. So we written one piece is contained in this, and we got a notice that you needed one number. So if you're doing a consumer pack business in India, you can worry about your purchase guy later, but first hire a lawyer before doing anything else. Then look at setting up a factory or doing anything, because on consumer pack, the moment your pack reaches across the shelves, you will get all kind of weird notices. Now I'll talk about the GST, which is one nation, one tax. It's the biggest regulatory change in India. There's one tax across the nation. Earlier we had a different tax structure. It's right now a short-term pain, but in long term it will boost GDP and trade significantly. There'll be no halting on transports on each state and region. Earlier, each state had a different law, so everything was checked 10 times. So if you're moving goods from north of India to south, it would be checked at least 10 to 12 different checkposts. That doesn't happen now. Logistics can be organized from DCs. Earlier, you needed to have a different sales tax number in every state. You needed different regulation. Now it can all be done through one number, and it makes very easy in the long run. What are the challenges in that right now? It all seems very nice, but the challenges that exist there are the IT infrastructure issue. The government is still not ready with everything that needs to be there. There's a lot of mix-up regarding the HSN code. Every item needs to be given a code, so there's a big mix-up on that. There's variation in taxes rates across the same commodity. For example, raw cashew nuts are taxed at 5%, but roasted and flavored is taxed at 12% under a different HSN code. So there's a big anomaly in where people make use of that loophole. E-way bill has become mandatory for anything over 50,000. You need to take an e-way bill from the government site before you can move those goods. And the failure to comply will attract very heavy penalties on that. And yesterday we saw that the whole government system crashed. So we did not, in fact, it has just not worked, the e-way bill thing right now. This is the message that we got yesterday, that it's just not working. So again, it has been extended. But the government's mandate in India is that if you have to move anything, you need to put it on the government website and take an e-way bill before you can move it. Now coming to the second part of my presentation, which is expectations of an Indian cashew nut kernel buyer. So as a processor of cashew nuts in India, as an end product where we roast them or flavor them or we pack them for the food service industry, we face a lot of challenges. This is, I think, more typical to the Indian context than the international market, but for the Indian market, there's a big lack of standardization in terms of the grades and color of the cashew nut. All specifications will need to be standardized across the industry for benchmarking. I'll give you an example, like when I need to buy cashew nuts, we buy all products, right from almonds to walnuts to cashews to pistachios. I can cover 1,000 tons of almonds in a single day if I want to, but if I have to buy even 100 tons of cashews in a day, it's just not possible because it's so fragmented as an industry and the way the industry works. The different grades. This is an example. If I ask from a quote from a buyer, from a broker, that, okay, I need to buy cashew nuts today. So I get from different factories, but this is what I get. I get 40 different grades that I will have to look at, even in a 180, in a 240 or anything. So if I'm looking for specific products, my need gets very limited. India has a huge range of cashew nut processors, but I need to go back. Go back. So like a grade like W240 in India, it is WW240 for one factory, it is W240, it is A240, it is P240, then there's a D240, there's a S240, and SW240. And this varies across all the suppliers. And even different factories of a same supplier, if I have one supplier, he has 5 factories, I face this that the same supplier will have quality variations. So my same supplier, W240 from his one factory will be different from W240 from his other factory. So we are left struggling where we are just looking at, okay, now which factory, which buyer. So it gets very limited as a matrix. If you look at it, it gets very limited to buy cashew nuts in India. The tolerance for each grade has to be same across the industry. So here's my suggestion on that, that instead of having all these grades, like for the international market, why not for the Indian market, you guys just have a W320 and a SW320. We've asked some of our suppliers and they've started doing that, and that really helps. And that standardizes even for the end consumer. In India, we end up confusing even the last end consumer of cashew nuts, because one time he will find one region, one buyer, he will find an extra white cashew nut. And the second time, if he opens the pack, he will find a slightly ivory colored. The consumer basically gets confused that this is the right quality, this is not, when it's same. So if we standardize and make it into a W320 and a SW320, that would really help. The weights, if all they could be in metric system of kgs or tons, as even somebody mentioned yesterday. Pack size, if it could reduce to a smaller pack size, works better for Indian logistics. Present challenges, we get rates in 11.34 or 22.680 kgs, then we are billed on 20 kgs, but we have to calculate on 1 kg. So if all this could be standardized as just a per kg rate, that would really help an Indian buyer. There are packaging concerns, so as I said, smaller, the better vacuum packing for vacuum retention, 5 or 10 kg packs instead of the 22 kg or the 20 kg. The impact on tin boxes during logistics, I've just shared, because when they move from one part of India to the other, sometimes we get like this in our factories. So India is a land of opportunities. Laws are at a nascent stage. You have to be extra vigilant to be on the wrong side for technical issues, technical small issues. But a billion population awaits the best of the world. So India is the land of the 0 and 1.25 billion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wingjan Jain, for his information about Indian market and about what buyers, what does cashew buyer want in India. So next, I would like to invite Ms. Amanda Wright, Purchasing Director of Humdinger, to make her presentation.
Okay, so some of you may know me already. I would still class myself as a newbie in the industry. I've been in the industry now for nearly 3 years. I think I joined the industry at the most turbulent time you could do. I remember my first cashew convention I came to in Dubai. Everybody was telling me that the industry was going to drop prices. I'm still waiting for that. It's not happened yet, it's just gone up. So maybe one day it will come down. Right. Yay. Okay. So I've been invited to come and talk about the European market, in particular the UK market. So even though we talk about cashew prices has significantly increased, demand in the UK market is still remains strong. There's several factors for this, and what we've seen year on year, even in the last year, is a £6 million turnover increase, partly due to price increases, but still due to consumer demand. The retailers have done a lot to obviously mitigate the price increases where possible, but now it's going to come down to everybody else to try and do their bit as well. What we have also seen is a significant growth in our nut mixes, and the reason why they've grown over a more substantial rate to any of the others is that we've reduced Brazil nuts and taken Brazil nuts because price has got too cost competitive for them, and we've reduced the amount of cashews. So we are at risk in the UK market of the demand slowing down if prices remain high. So what I've tried to do first of all is to show you in terms of the rate of sales that we see in the retailers. So this is one of the measures that we will use to test the performance of what our cashews are doing across the industry sector. What you will see is the two performing lines that outperform every other pack out there are the ones that we class as everyday value lines. So it is where they're using the cashew splits or the W450s. And the reason why they're still growing is because they're very price sensitive. and that the consumers, although they love cashews, at some point will disengage from cashews if prices remain. What we have also seen is the growth of cashews in the last year has happened because the retailers have downgraded the cashew grades that they are using. So whereas 240s used to be the main grade, they've now downgraded to a 320. Where they were using 320s, they're now using a 450 cashew. Where they can, they will use an SW cashew. And the reason is that they don't want to pass on these price increases to consumers because demand is strong. What we are seeing now is that if prices keep rising, the retailers can't do anything different to absorb it. So the only way for what will happen on store will be prices going up. One of the key areas that we talk about now within the UK market is health. Health trends now take into consideration every product people are buying. So over 27% of purchases made now take health into consideration. So where consumers used to eat a lot of roasted salted nuts and fried and coated nuts, what we are seeing is a trend towards natural nuts and people wanting to eat natural nuts. On top of that, there's concerns that the children within the UK industry, well, the children of today, by the age of 11, 1 in 3 kids will be classed as obese. By 2025, they predict that 268 million school children will be obese and will be overweight. So now to support natural products and health benefits, so it's not just adults that we're targeting, it is the younger generation and the millennials, is that we have TV adverts all the time promoting health snacks. There's adverts for parents to promote that give your child 2 snacks a day, but target them to 100 calories. So single serve shot packs is the new trend going forward. As a buyer, we talk about, obviously, what we need from the food manufacturer or from processors at origin. So one of the key areas of growth within the UK and the EU industry is sustainable and ethical sourcing. So corporate social responsibility is critical. As a UK producer, we have always had, and have done for many years now, had to present policies on that we don't use child labour. It's a big no-no, as you know, within there nowadays. We don't look at pollutants that can impact the environment. But what we are seeing is that not only are our customers expecting it of us, they're expecting it you as processors. So the key areas that we need people to start looking at is SEDEX, is an industry-known accredited body where you can actually post and publicise your ethical trade initiatives and your policies. What you can do within that, you can then, it's an independent auditable process that you can then share with all your customers, and that they can see that you're complying with the labour laws, they can see that you're complying with your local government's health and safety rules, that you're paying your employees the salaries that they deserve, that you are protecting the environment, that you have correct business ethics. All these really count now, because as a retailer, we're packing as a manufacturer under their license, and nobody wants bad press, and the onus is on us to protect their brand as much as it is for them to protect their own brand. The only way we see this working is if we work together with our processors and work together with the farmers. We've already discussed today that the cashew market is very fragmented. So there's a lot of air miles or road miles and sea miles that go in to this. So how do we get origin and the processors actually going back to where the seed is being grown and produced and reduce down the carbon footprint? How do we get working together to make sure that where possible we're reinvesting back in local communities, back in education, back in healthcare for everybody, back in food for local origins, that everybody is benefiting from this industry, not just certain businesses. One of the areas I've then touched on for you is, as a business, we actively go out and audit every one of our cashew factories. We will not work with a factory unless we've audited it, because we see this as a prestige product. It's a highly risky product as well. Now the fact that we obviously use it as a natural product. We obviously want it as a ready-to-eat product. So high standards must be met. So what I've done is just kind of summarize what we've seen as some examples in the last 12 months within factory audits. So key things that we see is wood within the factories. Wood you shouldn't ever have within a factory. It can blister, it can crack, it can harbour bacteria. So what we would want to do is start seeing that you're getting the appropriate plastic brushes within your factories, colour-coded. Factory repairs is, we see a lot of new factories being built, but what we're not seeing is that with some factories, the planned maintenance of the fabrication, the planned maintenance of the floors and cracks in walls is not being upkept as much as we would like it to be. Again, you have good factories, keep them up to spec. It's better for everybody if we do that. But my biggest concern that we've seen is hygiene. So where we're seeing people still wearing jewellery within factories, again, it's a risk of foreign body complaints. It's one of our biggest complaints that we see within production is foreign matter within it. So wearing jewellery, obviously it can easily fall into the products for us. On top of that, hand washing. So we do see hand wash stations, but let's remember people are touching this product with their hands. Don't use fragrant soap because, again, you can taint the product and taint the flavour of the product that we're buying. Make sure that people are wearing the correct PPE. So, again, there shouldn't be pockets in the PPE jackets because people can put things in the pockets, they can drop out when they're producing, and they end up in the finished product that we buy. As a business, we have to clean all our cashews that we use because, again, it's a high-risk product that we see compared to like an almond or a peanut, where we're not seeing anywhere near the same level of foreign body complaints. So we must reduce this at origin before it even comes to the UK. And then the last bit for me, in terms of a buyer, the biggest risk that we have on top of obviously factory standards is contractual terms. Obviously, one of my panels have already discussed that it's very easy. I say easy. It's much simpler to go out and buy almonds. It's much simpler to go out and buy peanuts. If I want to go and buy a year's worth of volume, I can. With cashews, again, it's very fragmented. People don't want to offer longer term contracts, and everybody wants prepayments before goods arrive. With every other nut that we buy, predominantly, we get payment terms on them. All we want to be able to do is nobody feels comfortable receiving the products and paying for them before they arrive. We just want to be able to see the products and make sure what we've ordered is what we get, rather than pay. It's a lot of money. We could be talking $140,000 a container that is tied up within our business on a product that we've not already seen. The other challenges that we face in terms of processing is where we get mixed seed, origin seeds within the product in the container. When we process, if it's a different origin, a seed, they perform slightly different when we're frying them. So we'll see colour discoloration, we will see different shrivelling, and it'll make the product it can look quite ugly and shriveled. So for us, it is imperative that, yes, we can use different seeds, but per batch, per load, it has to be one seed. And then it makes our manufacturing processes much simpler. There are standards out there that we all buy to, which is great. But again, as other people have touched on, that as price has gone up, the quality has come down. With the quality coming down, what we are seeing now is everybody's targeting the bottom end of the specification. And instead of it being a 3% moisture or 2% moisture, we're now getting 5% moisture. On top of that, that creates softness of the cashews. We're getting more entro complaints and everything like that, which adds more cost at our end. So one of the key things that we would like to do is start looking at how we get everything tested at origin independently, so that way we can actually, and I know, as a seller and as a buyer, that the product that's being shipped is the product that we're buying, and that if there's any issues, we're dealing with it before it even leaves origin, and making it much easier for everybody and being less detrimental to everybody's relationships. Delivery performance is absolutely key. So I know if I'm buying, again, if we talk about other nuts, in comparison to cashews. I can buy an almond to be shipped a specific week of a month. As a business that manufactures for retailers, that is absolutely critical that we know when our product is leaving origin. A cashew, we can only get, as a rule, it will be shipped within a month at some point. As a business, how do I plan to meet my customers' demands if I don't know when that product is leaving? So all it means is that I have to hold significantly more stock than I would like to, and it ties up a lot of working capital for my business to ensure that I can meet my consumers and my customer demands. The last part I'd like to touch on is standardising packaging to the processors, to people like myself. Our systems only work if we receive a standard pack format. If everybody ships in different pack sizes, then it makes it very difficult for us to ever reconcile our stock balances back. So where possible, we get £50 boxes, but we still have cashew splits where certain suppliers will deliver in £48 boxes and others will deliver in £50 boxes. We need it all to be £50 boxes. But then the last part of that, what I would say, is we need to be investing and looking at ways that we can deliver more than a £50 box. So my challenge back to the industry would be, how can we get a product in, say, a 500 kilogram bag that's vacuum packed and still reduces the risk of breakage and damage, delivered to my factory so we can get more products in a container and less manual handling? And how do we challenge the industry to make those changes?
Thank you very much for the information from Ms. Amanda Wright from Humdinger. I think this topic is, if we talk about this topic, what does the cashew buyer want, expectation and gap, there's too much things to talk about. So the next and the last will be Mr. Amit Khibat from Senior Vice President of Olam International.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Apart from quality and food safety, a kernel buyer probably also wants reasonable and stable prices for cashews. What I will do is I'll try and give you some price information on price movements of various nuts, including cashews, and then we will see how to deliver a steady, reasonable price to the cashew customer. So this is the edible nuts price trend for last 6 years. The orange line is for cashews, the green is for almonds, the blue is for peanuts at the bottom, and yellow is for hazelnuts. Now the red circle at the peanut at the left bottom, it has been steady since 2012. The first one is 2012 at the left side, this is 2017. The prices were high. Then there was a significant increase in peanut production in US due to new varieties of seed and high-yielding varieties introduced at that time. And since then, the peanut industry became very profitable, even more than cotton. In US, cotton and peanut are grown subsequently. And since then, since 2012, it has been an oversupply. It has been a buyer's market for peanuts, and that is why the prices are like this. Coming to hazelnuts, which is the yellow line, absolutely at the top, in 2014 March, which is the peak, there was a frost in Turkey. 40% of the crop was wiped out. Post that, there was a sharp drop in prices. The crop came back, and then the prices have been steady. The third circle, which is the green line, this is almonds. There was a spike driven by drought in California. And then, post December 15, the market crashed because of crop being normal and some defaults in Dubai for various reasons. And then the defaults carried on to India and China. Now, I'll give you a retail price comparison. We'll derive the conclusions later. I'll just give you some data. Now, if you see on the top, the retail prices of cashews have not gone up significantly. If you see the price trend from Q1 of 2016 till Q3, Q4 of 2017, it's a 19% increase in prices from 2016, although the kernel prices have gone up by 33%. I'm taking today's price as $4.70 or $4.80 for W320 FOB. So 19% increase on the shelf, 33% increase in absolute kernel prices. The retailers seem to be okay, because if you see, the almond prices have also not gone down, although the almond prices, the bulk almond prices went down, but on the shelf it's the same. So as a basket, probably the retailers are losing some money on cashews, making some money on almonds. So as a basket, they are fine with it. They don't want the demand to continue. Now the beauty is, today the price on the shelf for almonds and cashews is the same. Historically, cashews was always cheaper than almonds. Another fact to note is, nothing special has been done to increase the retail prices of cashews on the shelf. And that is why the consumption is not down. The consumption continues. At the bottom, that is the message. If you see this chart, that the almond and cashew prices both have gone up a little bit, although bulk almond prices are down and cashew prices are up. This is the cashew price chart since 2007. So the left corner is 2007. This is today. The blue one is W240. The red one is W320. And the green one is splits. So let us focus only on the red one, which is 320s, bulk of the production. In 2007-8, the spike, the first spike we see on this chart, was the financial crisis. Then in 2011, the second spike, the steep spike, is the Ivory Coast political crisis, when the shipments could not happen from Ivory Coast. And then the market fell significantly again when the shipment started. And the third one, at the rightmost corner, is the current price spike which we see. Now, key takeaways from this chart for us in the cashew industry: whenever the prices have increased sharply, they have also dropped quickly and sharply. Second, this time, which is the last spike which has happened or which is there now, is less steep. It is not very steep as compared to the previous two spikes. It is a gradual increase with some corrections in between. Some adjustments have been happening once in a while. But if you see the broad trend of the chart from left to right, the prices, the trend is on the higher side. It is moving towards higher side from 2007 to 2017. Now let's see what the current spike is all about, which is the next slide, a bit more detail. Now, why is the current spike different from the previous spikes? If you see 2007, this is 2007, 11, and 17. 2007 was a consumption-driven price increase. 2011 was a shortage-driven price increase. The current one is supply timing mismatch amplified by consumption increase. Because we have seen the consumption has not really dropped. It still continues to increase, although at a much lower percentage growth rate. The period of the spike, the current one, is 23, 24 months and continuing. The previous two were 15 and 19 months. See the percentage increase. 62% in 2007. 2011 was 70%. Right now it is only 33%. The base is high, but in percentage terms, it's not too huge. And the last one, most important, in 2007, the Ivory Coast raw nut price, because Ivory Coast is the largest exporter of raw cashews and it is growing, was less than 200 CFR. In 2011, less than 275 per kilo. Right now, or last year, 2017, 750 CFR. So what does this tell us? Most of the increase this time, the price increase has flown to the farmer. It is not with the trader, not with the processor. It is gone to the farmer. And what does it mean further? That for this to correct, the farmer price has to come down. You can't do anything else. Everybody else is already squeezed. The farmer price has to correct from 750 or 800. That is when we can see a correction, otherwise there's no way. So what is the need of the hour from buyer's point of view? Like we just saw from the lady here, that the prices have to be reasonable, prices have to come down. Last 2 years she's thinking, people have been telling her that prices will come down, but nothing has happened. They want reasonable and stable prices. Higher prices is one thing, but if it is stable at a certain level, that also helps. Stability in supply, growth in supply that matches demand, and a price at which they are able to promote cashews. They know in their minds that next 1 year, the prices will continue to be same. Even if it is high, but at least it is same price for the next 1 or 2 years. Because if they are not sure of availability of kernels, how can they promote? Because they don't know if they promote it, their promotion is not for tomorrow. They plan promotions 6, 8 months, 1 year in advance. This is where sustainability comes into the picture. We have heard from some buyers as well. So who can influence this, the situation we are in? One is the farmer. But the farmer, already his current income levels are very low. Even at 1050 CFI, it's nothing very great. Processor, his margins are very tight. We are all processors. We know how tight the margin has been for the last few years. We can develop better processing machines which reduce the brokens, increase the holes, better yield, etc. Yes, so some cost can come down. We can reduce the processing cycle time. Typically today, input to output, raw cashew to kernels, it takes about 12 to 14 days. We can try and see if technology can be improved. It can be 2 days, very good. You save a lot of money. Customer is the king, so we can't really comment how they would want to influence this. But on the farmer, processor, trader side, we have to decide what we can do. Sustainability. Some customers have spoken about it. Why do we need it? This is to answer the price stability, the volatility, etc. Cashew supply growth has come from Africa, typically over the last 8-10 years. With low cashew prices till 2015, there has been a crop degrowth in Asia. Vietnam crop has not really grown. In fact, 3 years back, when the prices were really low, a lot of farmers planted rubber trees instead of cashew trees. They actually uprooted the cashew trees. The crop went down. And there has been a reduction in growth rate in Africa. It is still growing, but the growth rate came down. We need to grow the crop more so that it is more than demand. Demand always will be there at a price. I don't think there is any doubt in anybody's mind about cashew demand not being there. It has to be reasonably priced. Obviously, if W320 becomes $7, we will see demand destruction. But at a reasonable price, let us say $4.50, $5, $4, I think demand is there. Even today, we see some little bit of growth. Yield improvement programs and acreage growth are required. Pre and post-harvest practice training, new varieties, high-yielding varieties. In Ghana, the government has come up with a new variety of seed, which from the day you plant it, in 18 months you start getting the yield. We used to talk about 4 years and 5 years, 18 months. And in 3 years, it is full yield. Just imagine if that can be done. In 18 months, you can probably get fresh cashews. So, and we need to keep in mind that we are competing with other nuts, not with ourselves. Obviously, we compete between India, Vietnam, Brazil, Africa, processing, prices, customers, but our competition is also with other nuts. We need to keep that in mind. We are already costlier than almonds. Almond board, as we discussed yesterday, has a lot of money, right? They collect 5 cents from every pound which is shipped. We don't do that. We are not able to do that. Sustainability as valued by customers. A lot of customers have told us what they value. They don't really tell you by paying you a higher price, but slowly it is happening. Leading buyers pay a premium for sustainability sourced cashews because they think about future availability. Because they are building a brand, they want that same product, same quality to be available over the next 5, 10, 20 years. They want to partner with suppliers to grow the crop. They are willing to spend some money there. Having people on the ground for them is becoming very, very important because they want traceability, they want transparency of the supply chain. I don't want to name the customers, but there are customers who are probably willing to pay a bit of premium if you want to follow a strategy which focuses on sustainability. We believe as Olam that in next 4 to 5 years, it will be table stakes. If you're not doing something like this, then probably the customers would prefer not to deal with you. But that's still probably 4, 5, 8 years away. Last slide. Sustainability does not mean that you have to just spend money. It's a win-win situation. Why? Because once you do this training, pre-harvest, post-harvest, high-yielding varieties, etc., you will get better kernel quality, better outturn, better processing efficiency, lower yield loss, and it presents an opportunity to lower the costs across the supply chain, which in turn will probably reduce the prices a bit, make it reasonable, and because the crop has grown, obviously it becomes a stable pricing for the customer. Thank you.
So this is for Ms. Amanda, right? So for you, what's now, the gap between, because we are processor and you are the big buyer. So what is mainly now the gap between, expectation of buyer and the supplier?
Hello? Oh, yeah. So I think there is a gap between what a buyer is expecting from a quality kernel and what a shipper or processor seems to think is acceptable. There is a very big difference between what we need and then what we have to do to the product to get to what we need so that we can use it versus some of the products that we receive from origin.
No, I think we have, for every quality there is a price. In the industry you will find various types of processors, and some of them surely will be able to meet your needs. So it's a price point. Today if you see a price of W320, and this is not just for you, this is for us as an industry we have to see. A W320 availability today in the market, the offers, there is a gap of 20 cents between various shippers. You can buy at 460, you can buy at 485. You can also buy at 495. So such a huge gap. Obviously, why is the gap there? Because there is a difference in quality, there is a difference in infrastructure. So it's there. And probably there are buyers for every quality, which is why it is being produced. So we have to keep that in mind, that if everybody decides that it has to improve, I think it will improve.
So my question is, there is a difference, what we see on count, when we see the count at the end, and we see the certificate of FINA control, there's a big difference in this.
Well, let me answer this question because this is to Vietnam market. I think in Vietnam we have three types of shippers. It's A, B, C. So the price is different between A supplier, B supplier, and C supplier. So the control of each factory is different. And VINA control, they can only, random check 20 cartons. So sometimes, what coming out, what you see, it maybe is not very correct.
Yeah, I believe there are some shippers A, B, and C, but at the end, when you check again AFI rules are AFI rules, and we see A, B, or C ship. At the end, you make a check against AFI rules. Maybe the AFI rules are too severe.
Well, as I explained, VINA control only do 20 carton random check, so it cannot say 100% right. So, but from the top shipper, we say top shipper, then the accuracy is better. That's all I can say.
Good morning. Gunjan and the lady, the prices of cashews have gone up in the last 4 to 5 years. But have you actually seen any demand destruction because of the prices? Because I mean, as far as I understand, the demand has also gone up in countries like India and probably other countries. But I mean, as we've been talking, that the price rise will see a lot of demand destruction. But from your perspective, have you actually seen any demand destruction in the last couple of years?
So yeah, in absolute terms, if you look at it on a way that the way the Indian market is growing, I would say there is demand destruction, but not in absolute terms. If we were consuming X amount of cashews, India is consuming now X plus, even with the rise. But if you compare to other nuts, almonds, walnut consumption in India, the overall nuts and dried fruit consumption is growing at about 20–25%. So cashews are not growing at the same way that everything else is. Walnuts have grown almost, for the last 3 years, they're growing at 35%. Almonds are growing at 18%. Cashews are not growing at the same pace. So we've seen a lot of shift when we talk about in retail. We've seen actual shift where people are moving from cashews to almonds because for an end consumer, the perceived value of cashew and almond is almost equal. So a lot of thing in the marriages in India, marriage gifting is a big segment. So we have seen people move away from cashews to almonds. So yeah, if you look at it that way, demand has come down, that they have not grown the way they should. But I think it's good that they have not grown in India the way they should, because otherwise if the cashews were growing, cashew consumption in India was growing the way everything else is growing, cashews we'd be talking about $10 a pound right now. So it's good that they're not growing the way they've grown, other nuts have grown in India.
So to add to that, what we have seen is in the UK market is that the growth of cashews has still been happening. It isn't as fast as other nuts that have been growing. But I think because we've seen a steady price increase over the last 3 years, the consumers have had a chance to adapt their pricing expectations. For example, if we look at Brazil nuts last year, the crop was decimated and the prices tripled. What we've seen is demand has just plummeted. At a point, that will happen to cashews if they carry on. There is a price-sensitive point where consumers won't pay for them anymore. And then all of a sudden, you will see overnight the volume will drop off. We're not there yet, but we're not far off it either.
So thank you very much for all the audience, and thank you very much for all the presentation.
Thank you to the moderator and the panelists. At this point, we will have mementos presented. So if I may ask Mr. Wu Tai Son to please stay on stage, and we will have the mementos coming up. The first one up will be from Ms. Amanda Wright, Purchasing Director, Humdinger Limited, and the mementos will be presented. Round of applause, everybody. Next one up will be Mr. Amit Kirbat, Senior Vice President, Olam International. Next up would be Mr. Gunjan Jan, Director, VKC Nuts Private Limited. Last but not the least, Mr. Sadananda Nair, Business Head, Cashew, Ving Corporation, DMCC.